And so it was foretold that Josh would podcast on June the 20th of 2025 with one MRX Dentith.
Yes. So shall we get into it?
The ancient text said that Josh, known as the father of two and ambivalent about most things, would lack patience in the endeavour, for he was a tired man who desired nothing more than an early night.
Okay, what's going on?
This, in turn, would lead to confusion and, eventually, anger.
It's not so much anger as it is annoyance at yet another pointless introduction.
Yet in Josh's frustration, an idea was born. An idea that would have grave repercussions.
Look, can we just go to the theme?
And lo, a theme tune was played, meaning that Josh would have to podcast once more.
Oh, actually... The Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy, brought to you today by Josh Edison and M. Dentith. Hello and welcome to the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, I am Josh Edison, and in Zhongguo, China?
Guangzhou. Guangzhou.
Oh, Guangzhou is the place, but the name, the Chinese name for China is Zhongguo?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yes. I'm not speaking a tonal language. I'm never quite certain I'm getting that right. But anyway, the point is, we both live
Middle
in countries...
Kingdom, Joshua, the Middle Kingdom.
We both live in countries that have names in multiple languages, and in New Zealand, indeed, today is...
I suspect, actually, China has
multiple
name
languages.
In one... Well, actually, weird. So China has one official name in one official language. New Zealand is kind of an interesting situation. It had a name, and then people colonized it and gave it another name. And now there's a big fight as to whether we should go back to what should be the original name or stick with the colonial imposition. And China basically has that kind of situation that for people outside of the Middle Kingdom refer to this place as China and refer to the people in it as Chinese, even though that's really more of an imposition from colonial powers to name such things.
Exactly. I don't even know where the word came from. But anyway, in New Zealand, in Aotearoa at least, it is Matariki today. We got... Who gave us Matariki as a public holiday? It was the last Labour government, right?
Yes.
It's only a few years old.
Definitely wanted to take it away, but National have decided to keep it.
Yep. So that's what it is today. So happy Matariki to those who celebrate. Now, we have an episode. It's a regular episode. It's not a book. It has, I can guarantee that it has nothing to do with Tunnel Vision by Martin Butler. I shouldn't have even said those words. I'm afraid I've summoned them now.
I mean, it'd be terrible if I guess actually, even though I've told you what the topic is, actually, we've got a new... It's North Head is behind us now.
Yep, exactly.
In fact, it's lurking right behind you right now. Josh, watch out! North Head's right behind you.
Ah, good, it can stay there. That's why people throw salt over their shoulder. It's to get in North Head's eye, I believe. Now, before we get into this brand new episode of brand new stuff that has nothing to do with tunnels under North Head, you've been stepping out on me again, you sly gangster. You faithless, wanton person, you. Tell me about your latest podcast appearance.
I made an appearance on Unsettling Extremism, a podcast hosted by Avery Smith, which is part of...
He Whenua Taurikura.
Which is Joanna Kidman's research group at the University of Wellington, Victoria, University Victoria. People who know anything about the naming of universities in New Zealand will find that immensely funny or annoying, and people outside of New Zealand will go, why has it got a strange name? It's because nobody knows what that university is called anymore. They keep changing its name and then changing it back.
So what's the general project of this group and the podcast?
So the group is looking at misinformation and disinformation with a particular emphasis on what's going on in Aotearoa. And so I was talking about what our general view towards these things called conspiracy theory should be. Because there is a sense in the misinformation, disinformation space that conspiracy theories quite easily fit into the misinformation space and often are used as disinformation. So they're propaganda for right-wing views. And so my argument was that we need to be slightly more nuanced about that, because one of the reasons why people fall for misinformation and fall for disinformation is because there are actual conspiracies out there of people who are creating misinformation and disinformation. So conspiracy theories are sometimes symptomatic of misinformation and disinformation, but sometimes actual conspiracies are generating that misinformation and disinformation, and thus we should be taking those conspiracy theories seriously, because theorizing about the generation of misinformation and disinformation is warranted in a large number of cases. And of course, we're seeing this play out right now with the Israel-Iran conflict, where Israel and now the US is adamant that Iran is weeks away from producing a nuclear weapon, which seems an awful lot like what happened back in 2003, where the UK and the US were adamant that the Iraqi regime under Saddam Hussein were in the production phase of weapons of mass destruction, thus legitimizing a regime change. And in the 2003 case, there was quite clearly a conspiracy theory being laundered by the US and the UK to justify regime change in Iraq. And many people are thinking that might be a conspiracy theory being promoted by the government of Israel and the United States in order to promote regime change in Iran.
Yes, it's all a little bit of a worry.
History is repeating itself, Josh, and I don't like it.
No. Well, then it's a good thing we're not going to talk about anything to do with that, and we're just gonna dig our heads in the sand, and instead talk about what some popes were saying several hundred years ago.
What was said about some popes, not what some popes were saying. What was said about some popes?
Yes, and then what the popes said about what was said about them. Anyway, there's a whole lot of popes.
I mean, yeah,
Let's get into it.
There's been a lot of popes,
Quite a lot,
an awful lot of popes.
It's almost like the church has been around for multiple thousands of years.
Yeah, and we're only going to be talking about half of them.
Oh God, is that all? Right. Well, then we better play a chime and get straight into it while there's still popes left.
We should play something kind of saintly,
ecclesiastical. Yeah, find a good sound clip. Right, now thinking about it, this could possibly have been a What the Conspiracy episode, because I think you're going to be doing most of the talking on this one, given that it's about Catholic popey stuff that I don't really understand at all, and I suspect my main contribution to this episode is going to be pronouncing foreign names. But hit me with it. What is the prophecy of the popes?
Or the Prophetia Sancti Malachi Archiepiscopae de Sumnis Pontificus, aka the prophecy of Saint Archbishop Malachi concerning the Supreme Pontiffs. Now, I was sure we had talked about this in a previous episode. So I thought this was going to be a kind of return back to something we had talked about and then make it, well, now that we've got Pope Leo, what do we make of the prophecy of the popes? But Josh is adamant we have never mentioned the prophecy of the popes before. Were we broadcasting when Francis became Pope? I think we were. I think our podcast is older than the pontificate of Pope Francis.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
So I'm sure I must have mentioned this when he was consecrated as Pope.
No, it's not, because I remember in one of our recent ones we were looking back at your old radio segments from University.
You're right. Yes,
one of them was about Benedict stepping down.
All right, so
Pope Francis is papacy is older than this podcast. Something that is actually older than this podcast. That's kind of
And
comforting.
there aren't that many things.
Yeah.
So yes, so obviously this is a case where I must have mentioned the prophecy of the popes when I was doing things for BFM, and I've just conflated BFM with this podcast as I am wont to do. So the prophecy of the popes is a selection of 112 short cryptic phrases in Latin, and they are attributed to a 12th century pope by 12th century saint by the name of Malachi, who was a archbishop in Ireland who apparently wrote a series of prophecies of popes to be from his perspective of the 12th century. And what's interesting about this list of popes is that it has a final pope, a final boss of the Roman Catholic Church. And if the prophecy of Malachi is to be believed, that final pope was Pope Francis, which does raise an interesting question. Who's this Pope Leo Maladi if Pope Francis was the final pope?
Right. So it was 112 phrases. Is that 112 popes? And there
Yes,
have
yes,
been
112 popes. I mean, so essentially what the prophecies of Saint Malachi are cryptic phrases which are meant to be, in some respect, a description of the person who will be pope. And then actually, I mean, actually, we actually need to get into the history of when these prophecies were uncovered to actually explain what's going on here. So let's actually go through the prophecies themselves. So the prophecies of Saint Malachi are purported to predict popes, along with a few anti-popes of the Roman Catholic Church, beginning with Celestine II, who was almost the 163rd Pope. Almost the 163rd Pope.
how do you become almost a pope? Did the hat not fit?
Well, so what happened was that Celestine II was elected in conclave, and then a day later, the person who would have been Celestine II abdicated due to factional violence. So there was an actual riot in St. Peter's. And so the person who would be Pope and had already chosen his papal name of Celestine II decided that actually being Pope wasn't a good idea given how violent the conclave had turned out to be, and thus decided to step down and allow another person to be Pope. So Celestine II was never actually ordained or consecrated as Pope. He was selected to be Pope, chose a papal name, but never actually got round to kind of signing the paperwork to be actually made Supreme Pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church.
Right, but they were Celestine II as the first pope identified in the prophecies, though, or at least I assume this is going to be a bit of a Nostradamus-y thing, where there's a whole bunch of kind of vague statements that people interpret to be talking about different popes when it suits them.
Yes, precisely. It is very Nostradamus-y. And actually the fact that Celestine II is the first person presented as Pope in the list is going to be something which is interesting for why people think these prophecies turn out to be, spoilers, not true. Anyway, what we have is a number of phrases which are meant to identify these particular popes. And then for some of them, but not all of them, there's an interpretation of the phrase, explaining what the phrase means and how it accords to a particular person in history. And the reason why we have some explanations of the cryptic phrases and not others is that the prophecy of the popes, even though it's attested to have been written in the 12th century, was first published in 1595. And it was first published in 1595 by a Benedictine monk by the name of Arnauld Wion, who claims to have found the prophecies of Saint Malachi and published them for the first time.
Right. So I'm going to assume at some point there's going to be a bit of controversy around, are these actually 400-year-old papers that this guy found, or did he make them up himself, or did they come from somewhere else?
Bingo!
Yeah, but at any rate, so we've got. I assume assuming they're genuine, these prophecies started from the time of Saint Malachi and went off into the future. Then,
Yes, so Saint Malachi is writing before the election of Celestine II, so it's predicting the first pope in the list, the pope elected in 1143. Then the the text is lost or kept in storage for 400 years. What happens is that Wion goes to Rome, discovers the prophecies locked up in the secret archives of the Vatican, and decides that the public needs to know about these, although sometimes the story is read that there were people who knew about the prophecies and wanted them published. So all Wion is doing is pleasing the public there by finally releasing the prophecies of Saint Malachi to the public, although there's no evidence that anyone knew about these prophecies before Wion actually published them in 1595. But whatever he does, he publishes the prophecies in 1595, attributing them to Saint Malachi, who was the 12th century bishop of Armagh in Ireland. And because he's publishing them in 1595, he's able to provide interpretations of the phrases up until 1595 because he has been in correspondence with another Roman Catholic, a historian by the name of Alphonsus Chakionis, who is a known historian of the papacy who is based in Rome. So Wion is going, look, I've got these prophecies. They were written in the 12th century. They refer to a whole bunch of popes that Malachi is predicting. And of course, now with the benefit of history, I can look at all of the popes up until the present day and get a notable historian of the papacy to tell us which names these accord to and how they fit. So, how does the short cryptic phrase describe known popes up until the present day? And it's amazing how accurate this list turns out to be, which means that, of course, the future popes that Malachi was predicting, that must be pretty accurate as well.
yes, no, that's what I was going to say. You've got at the time Wion is finding them, you've got these prophecies from 400 years in the past predicting 400 years worth of popes plus another, I guess, 400 or 500 worth after that. So they've got this list and they've got 400 years worth of history, and now they go match the two up. Is this where things get Nostradamus-y?
Yeah, so basically, I'll give you some examples of some of the entries. So there are a lot of popes. So I should point out, Celestine II would have technically have been the 163rd pope of the Roman Catholic Church in the 12th century. So there are a lot of popes in the past, and in the 400 years, there's quite a number of popes in that time. So you get some examples: sus in cribo, or pig in sieve. Now, this is referring to Pope Urban III, and it's because his papal arms included two pigs and a sieve, or sieve, as people will probably say.
Civ. An odd thing to have on one's coat of arms, maybe. I don't know what the heraldic connotations of a civ is, but
So papal arms are kind of interesting in that they usually indicate something about the past of the man who has become pope. So they often, it turned out to be no surprise. Most of the princes of the church, the cardinals, didn't come from the poor or the working classes. They tended to be members of the nobility, and thus they tended to keep some of the noble aspect of their past in the coat of arms they had when they became pope.
Right. So, actually, I'm looking down the list, and there's some good stuff here. So
Oh,
let's
yeah,
just go
yeah.
straight into that. Yeah, yeah.
So
Keep
we've
going.
also got Comes Signatus, or designated count. That's Pope Innocent III. I just like that one because it does sound a little bit like the system they have in the US, the designated survivor, the person who takes over the government should all of the top ranks get removed. You also have the designated count.
Yes.
I think that's great. But
His job is to go on Sesame Street and
the
case
next
all the
one,
other vampires.
Agrinas Year, or Snaky Man.
Snaky Man. Good on
Yeah,
you,
Snaky
Snaky
Man.
Man.
So this is Pope Gregory X, and his coat of arms were the coat of arms of the Viscounts of Milan, which featured a large serpent devouring a male child.
Because aristocrats are normal and ordinary people.
Yeah, although this one, the interpretation is ever so slightly shaky because people aren't actually sure whether Gregory X actually used that on his papal arms, but it is certainly associated with the family he comes from.
Right.
Then we get Picus inter Iphacus, or woodpecker between food. And this refers to Pope Nicholas IV, and it's thought to be obscure wordplay about his place of birth, woodpecker
Right.
between food.
Not some sort of reference to the fact that he lost his penis in a strange accident and had to have it replaced with a wooden one,
I
which he
mean,
used to stir his food with. I don't. Yeah. I'm
maybe.
sure you can come up with a better story.
I mean, popes have done some strange things with their penises over time.
Oh yes.
No one disputes that.
Mm.
Then we get De Futore Othio, or from a bony cobbler, and this refers to Pope John the 22nd, whose father might have been a cobbler from the town of Ossia. No one actually knows. This is an interpretation of, well, I mean, it might refer to his dad.
Mm. I suppose.
And finally, from my list of favourites, which are pre 1590, there's a reason why these are the pre 1590 popes, Frigius Abbas, or the Cold Abbot.
Sounds a bit like the Monty Python, the biggest dickus Latin
Frigius
name for
Abbas.
the abbot, Frigidus Abbas.
And that's Pope Benedict the XII, who was an abbot in the monastery of Fontfroid, which translates to Cold Spring.
Which Benedict was the latest Benedict? He was like 16 or something.
I think so.
Right,
I haven't really.
so
I don't really keep up with the numbering of popes. And then I know the current pope is Pope Leo, but exactly which Leo he is,
I think he's Leo II.
I think he is. But if I had to answer that to save the world, I would be going. I might want to ring a friend.
Okay, so we've got a bunch of historical, which were at the time historical papacies, and a bunch of
and all of these ones up until the
predictions.
1590s are provided with interpretations by a notable Roman historian of the papacy. So things look pretty good at this stage.
Yeah. So
Except,
I was going to say, once they get these ones, do they just present them and say, therefore, these ones must also be going to come true, or with their sort of with their interpretations along with them as well, saying what they think they're going to be?
So post 1590, we just have the cryptic phrases, and interpretations have been made of those post facto. So everyone has gone, well, now we've had this particular pope. We now need to work out how does the phrase accord to the man who was consecrated pope. But prior to that, no, we have a notable historian doing the work, except there's no evidence this notable historian knew Weon, even though they were both living in what we now call Italy at the time. And Chakionis, who is the Roman historian here, also dies 4 years after the prophecies are written, and nobody puts the prophecies of Saint Malachi in amongst his known written works.
Right. So do we just have Weon's word for it that he consulted this historian?
Yeah,
How did he come
basically.
up? Right.
And this is where Celestine II ends up being a bit of an issue here, because Chakianis would be the kind of person who would go, Celestine II was never Pope. He was elected Pope, but he was never ordained or consecrated as Pope. He was an almost Pope, not a real Pope. So this is the first historical era we find in the prophecies of Saint Malachi. And what's interesting here is that the eras in the pre-1595 popes are all eras that we find in a history of the popes as published in 1557 by this man by the name of Onofrio Panvinio. So Panvinio's work makes errors like saying that Celestine II was a pope when he wasn't. And so it seems that what Weon was doing was going, I need a well-attested to, well-respected source to show that these interpretations are correct, because I've stolen them from one source, but I'm associating them with a notable historian like Chikionis instead, a man whose name I've pronounced 3 different ways in the course of this podcast.
I would say, actually, because the double C's in the middle, I would say Ciachonius. Ciachonius. I don't know if it's Latin rather than Italian. It could be literally anything. Pronounce it however you want. He's DB
It's true.
for
And
500 years. He's not
and the
complain.
pronunciation of Italian and Latin, particularly in the Middle Ages, is heavily disputed.
Well, there we go. I'm going to call him Ralph.
I mean, surely if you're going to use his first name, why does it call him Alphonsus?
I could.
I mean, he's not going to come up again, so it doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter. Forget him. So these questions is what you're saying.
Yeah, so we have a obvious historical error at the very beginning of the prophecy of the popes. And we also have what appears to be fairly good evidence that the person who is said to be the interpreter, Alphonsus, is not, because the errors we find in the interpretations actually belong to Panvinio instead. And this is why most people think that the prophecies are a forgery. Malachi did exist. He was an Irish saint who was the Archbishop of Armagh in the 12th century, but there's no record of the prophecies basically before Weon publishes them. And interestingly enough, the Roman Catholic Church has no stance whatsoever on the legitimacy of these prophecies. It's a little bit like the issue around the Shroud of Turin. The Catholic Church has never, well, actually, that's not true. The modern Catholic Church neither claims the Shroud of Turin is a fake, nor does it claim it's an actual relic of Jesus Christ. They go, it's a holy object that people venerate, and that's all we're going to say about the matter. We don't really want to get into the legitimacy or origin of the shroud. It's just, it's a venerated object, and that's what it is. And the prophecies are kind of in the same thing. There's certainly a list of popes. That is the Catholic Church's stance on this. It is a list of popes, or at least it's a list of attested popes.
And it is definitely from the 1590s. Claiming to be based on material
it is first published at that point. And thus, obviously, all of the popes pre the 1590s, apart from Celestine II, for example, seems to be a fairly accurate list of popes that have been, because by the 1590s, you already know about those popes. And the question becomes, what do we make about the popes after the 1590s?
Well, yes. So I assume this is. I assume the reason why we're still talking about this to this day is because people have gone through the list post 1590 and tried to map it to all the popes that came after.
Well, precisely. And I mean, so as I think there are two interesting things here. So obviously, the pre 1590 popes seem to be an accurate assaying of men who have been pope, apart from a few problems like Celestine II. And so we have these short cryptic phrases that fit the men who took the role. If the prophecies are a forgery, then obviously it's quite easy to go through a list of people who were popes and then go, what's a short cryptic phrase that suggests Nicholas IV? Oh, well, we've got the papal arms here, something, 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 snaky man.
Mm.
But everything after the 1590s, you have these cryptic phrases that could, by and large, just mean anything. And so then the interesting question is, are they accurate, which would mean the prophecy may well be accurate, or are people really stretching to make people kind of fit these short cryptic phrases? And then, of course, the other big issue is the list ends with a final pope. And that
Mm.
final pope would seem to be, depending on who you talk to, either Benedict or Francis, but definitely not Leo. Leo is at least one pope too far. So,
Right.
what's up with Leo?
Is the final one in the list actually identified as the final pope, or is it just
Yes,
this
in
is
fact,
okay? Right.
I've actually got. So it's Petrus Romanus, qui passet always in motus Triblianius, quibus transactionis hiatus. This is where I end up going. My reading of Latin is Theptciolus deregator et ludix tremendus Iudacibit populum theum finis, which is very badly read out Latin. I apologize to the one or two people who may vaguely know Latin who listen to this podcast who are going, oh my God, I'm unsubscribing based upon that bit of tragedy. But the translation, which I can read because it is in English, Peter the Roman, who will pasture his sheep in many tribulations, and when these things are finished, the city of 7 hills will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge his people. The end. Which pretty much wraps it up for the Roman Catholic Church and also Rome.
Mm.
Now, I don't know about you, Josh, but after Pope Francis died, Rome was not destroyed.
It wasn't, nor was Pope Francis anything that could really be thought of as Peter the Roman,
I mean, he was a pasturer of sheeps.
I suppose.
He
But
did have many tribulations. He had many health issues during his
yeah,
time.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Although I'm sure for pretty much every papacy you could point to some
And I mean,
tribulations for.
I know the dreadful judge Simon Cowell has been judging his people for quite some time, but it didn't seem to bring about the end of the world.
No, no. Maybe it didn't. We didn't notice. But yeah. Okay. So we've got a list of popes. It has a definite end, and it contains only so many popes that there have now been more than that. I guess the first thing to ask is, have these post 1591s been in any way accurate sounding, or has there been some fairly severe reaching to make the map to the popes that we have?
Well, should we have a look at some of the
Yeah.
post 1590 popes? So let's bring up our list of the prophecy of the popes. So yeah, these are called the post-publication popes, the 1590s
The
to
PPPs?
the present. And we have pious citizens in war, Innocent the Ninth, and the interpretation here is proponents of the prophecies, and we're going from the Wikipedia guide here. I should point out, if you look up prophecy of the popes, most of the things you find are people saying, this is an amazing list, it might be a forgery. There's actually very little contemporary commentary on the prophecy of the popes one can find. So the Wikipedia article for the actual list is actually as good as you tend to find online. But yes, for Innocent the Ninth, proponents of the prophecies have suggested different interpretations to relate this motto to Innocent the Ninth, including references to his birthplace of Bologna or the title of the Patriarch of Jerusalem. Leo the Ninth, who was Vidodus Ur, or Wavy Man, this may have been intended by the author of the prophecies to suggest to his audience a possible heraldic design, but it does not correspond to Leo IX's Medici arms. Proponents of the prophecies have also suggested different interpretations to relate this motto to this pope, including relating it to his short reign, passing like a wave. And so this
Right.
is the
Oh, right.
standard interpretation one gets.
So if that was Leo the Ninth, then the current one can't be the second. Hang on. Oh, it's the 14th. God, he's
So there we
Leo the
go.
14th.
See,
Why did I
I
think he was
told
the
you, if we
second?
had to save the world, we'd need to ring a
Yeah,
friend.
horribly wrong. Anyway, it doesn't matter for the current discussion. So that's, are they all like that? It seems like you sort of have to do a bit of fast talking to make any of
Yeah,
these
so I
things
mean,
line
you
up.
get Bellua Infestialibus, the insatiable beast. This is Innocent the 11th. Proponents of the prophecies have attempted to link this motto to the lion on Innocent the 11th's arms.
Really, if I heard of someone who was prophesied to be the insatiable beast, I would have
Yeah,
made up quite a different story.
I would have gone for how many children did this Pope
Yes.
actually have whilst in the papacy? You get Raftum in Porta or Rake in the Door. Some sources discussing the prophecy give Innocent the 12th's family name as Pignatelli del Rastallo, which would provide a clear way for opponents to connect this motto to this Pope. Rastallo or Rastrallo is Italian for rake. Others, however, give the Pope's family name simply as Pignatelli, indicate that it is difficult to find a satisfactory explanation to associate the Pope with the motto.
Right. So even now, there's a bit of debate. I get is there about whether or not the commentaries are actually getting it on the nose or not.
Yeah. So it is becoming incredibly awkward to find anything to give you a hard and fast connection between most of the members of this list and the popes that have come after Weon supposedly discovered the prophecies when he was in Rome.
Right. So and then I mean we're sort of quibbling over details here when there is still the fact that there have been more popes than this thing lists, and it says the last one on its list is the last pope. So are people still taking this seriously? Do people now feel the need to explain how this can be, or have people just gone, oh, okay, well, I guess then it was all just a bit of fun?
Well, people have done a little bit of bending to try and work out how they can make the prophecies fit the fact that the popes don't really match particularly well, and especially the fact that there are more popes than there are popes on the list of Malachi. And so some people think that maybe the list is incomplete, that there are popes between listed popes. This would A, allow for Celestine II to appear on the list, despite the fact that Celestine II was never a pope. And that would resolve the issue because Leo tends not to be the last pope, because we can simply massage the list and say there are some popes missing, which means that the prophecies of Saint Malachi is simply meant to be a list of the notable popes. And that also means you can start massaging the list and go, well, look, this match isn't particularly good for, say, Leo the 12th, but if we move Leo the 12th up or down the list, then we might find a better match.
Or we say, oh, Leo the 12th wasn't one of the notable ones, so there isn't actually a prophecy that corresponds to him. Yeah.
And some people are going, well, look, maybe there are more anti-popes in the list than have currently been counted. So anti-popes are a situation where you have more than one pontiff at a time, and the pope that ends up being the accredited one in history becomes the pope, and the pope that ends up not being considered the pope by history ends up being the anti-pope, and sometimes there's been multiple anti-popes. People are going, well, look, maybe the list, we're counting too many or too few anti-popes in the list, which would be indication that Malachi had a different judgment as to who was supreme pontiff compared to the Roman Catholic Church themselves. And this would allow you to, once again, massage the list. So the historian Herman Joseph Hieri proposed a different correspondence of popes to the aphorisms of the 1595 publication by removing 3 of the 7 anti-popes on the list: Alexander V, John the 23rd, and Felix V. Although then that raises the question, why are you selecting only 3 of the 7 antipopes?
Yes, so people are still trying to massage it then, still trying to make it fit. Which I suppose there's a few people around who are still trying to make Nostradamus fit as well,
Well,
and various
precisely,
other
yeah.
prophecies, yeah.
But there's probably a better explanation for this list, in that this list was propaganda for one particular cardinal to be Pope next.
Oh, I see. So so the idea is he commissioned this person to come up with a legitimate look of real prophecies that have come true. And wouldn't you know it, the next one prophesied on the list happens to be a guy who looks just like me. What a
Yeah,
coincidence!
so this doesn't actually require the person in question to have commissioned the list. It just requires that there were people who thought this person should be Pope next and thought that maybe something that looks a little bit like a prophecy might swing a papal election towards the designated candidate. So the first pope mentioned after 1590, the pope who would be pope next from the perspective of Wion, is described as ex antiquitae verbis, aka of the antiquity of the city or from the old city, which would suggest that one Cardinal Girolamo, 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 Simoncelli, who was from Orvieto, which in Latin is Urb Vitus, or the Old City, would be the perfect candidate to match the aphorism. And so this is a reason to think that maybe the prophecies were written to make it seem like Simoncelli was predestined to become pope, and all of the names afterwards are just meant to make the list look more legitimate. Because a prophecy that gets published in 1595 that only mentions one more pope is going to look a little bit suspicious. But if you then extend time out and have a few more popes and then go, well, we need to kind of end this list. Well, I guess we just suggest the person who is hundreds of years away from us will be the pope of the end time, then that's a very good way to disguise your propaganda as something which looks like a legitimate prophecy.
Yes, and we all know it's not a legitimate prophecy unless it predicts the end times. Yeah, I see that now. It would be like having something that sort of had a whole list of American presidents and then says the next president is going to be someone whose name rhymes with Ronald Bump.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, of course, it turns out that Simoncelli did not become pope. So the person who would perfectly fit the aphorism did not become pope. Instead, Cardinal Nicolino Sfondrati became Pope Gregory the 14th. And so people have tried to twist the aphorism to fit to fit that of Pope Gregory the 14th. I'm not going to try and once again massacre the Italian last
I
name
don't
here.
even know how to pronounce that one. Yes.
Well, the other thing is we've got it's that F which appears in Latin text, which actually isn't an F proper in modern pronunciation,
right.
which actually
Okay,
might be
well,
a double S. So it might be Sondrati. So the
whatever,
explanation
Latin.
for Gregory the 14th is that his father was a senator in Milan, and senator comes from the word senex, which is Latin for old man, or maybe because Milan is an old city, then that would explain why he comes from the old city. Either his old man is an old man, or his old man is from an old city, and that would allow it to come from the antiquity of the city or from the old city instead. And this also might explain Celestine II. So maybe Wion actually quite deliberately started with a person who would have been Pope, who was excised due to factional violence, by going, well, look, the person who should have been Pope was opposed by factionalism. The person who should be Pope next might be opposed by factions, but is predestined by God to be Pope. So you know who you've got to elect in an upcoming conclave. It's Simoncelli.
Clever. If they'd been a little bit clever, they would have covered their bases and found up something, come up with something that was ambiguous enough that it could be interpreted perfectly as either of the possible candidates. Then either way, they could say,
except of course they don't. They don't want it to be so open to interpretation that
well,
anyone.
yes,
Could
they don't
become
actually
Pope.
want
They
that,
really
do
want
they?
it to be
They are
open to
going for a particular
interpretation
angle.
to one man and only one man. So yes, it seems that a very good explanation of the prophecy of the popes was that it was written as propaganda for one particular candidate, and it didn't work. And yet, people, and I say people, some people continue to believe it and continue to try to work out how to make the prophecy of the popes fit post Simon Shelley and particularly fit post Petrus Romanus.
Right. It just put me in mind of that. Did you ever see the crossword that came out the day before Clinton was elected? And one of the clues across the middle is tomorrow's headline. And they had very cleverly arranged all of the clues that intersected with that one to be ambiguous. They could be one of two things, and depending which one you choose, the clue, which was tomorrow's headline, could either be Clinton elected or Bob Dole elected.
Oh,
It's
no, I have not seen
ridiculously
that.
clever. It's like, hang on, I've got it here. Which was it was 5th of November 1996. It doesn't say what the newspaper was. But it has. They did all sorts of stuff like the clue that intersected with the first letter was black Halloween animal, which could either be cat, therefore it would start C for Clinton, or bat, therefore it would be B for Bob Dole, and it was ridiculously clever and frankly better than these prophecies of yours.
Not mine, Albert Wion's.
I blame you
Not
entirely.
even Albert Wion's, Arnold Wion's. Albert Wion's prophecies are just not known at all.
No.
Although apparently they were very accurate.
Oh, well, maybe you should look into them next. But so that's it then. We've got a bunch of interesting prophecies that may have just been a bit of good press for a hopeful popeful, and people have stuck with them for 500 years, 450 years.
And of course, if the theory that the prophecies were simply written as propaganda for Simoncelli is true, then that may well be an example of an actual conspiracy. Because presumably, Wion wasn't simply going one day, oh, I think Simoncelli should be the next pope. I'm going to spend a lot of time making up cryptic Latin phrases to fit with a whole bunch of popes pre the next conclave, and then spend quite a bit of time making up cryptic Latin phrases to fit in with people who might be pope after Simoncelli. Presumably, it was a bunch of people getting together going, look, the person who needs to lead the Roman Catholic Church in the future is Simoncelli. He's the man for the moment. But the worry is some of those cardinals might go in a slightly different direction. So we need to nudge them along with what appears to be a bit of divine guidance or providence. So let's get together, produce a list, and try and manipulate the vote. And if that's true, that was an example of a conspiracy to install their man as head of the Roman Catholic Church.
Very much so, which means we're 100% justified in having talked about it for an entire episode.
Even though, because it took so long for us to review Tunnel Vision, it's kind of not a particularly timely episode. If we'd done this just after Leo's election, that would have been really, really timely. But one thing people say about the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy, we're not a timely podcast.
No, nor should we be, I think. That's in fact, that's why we should say we had planned to record this a couple of days earlier, and I actually forgot because I was busy doing a bunch of things, was not checking my emails to get the reminder, and we had to reschedule it. That's my commitment to not being on time. I apologise for nothing. So I think we're done. Talking about those for now. Hopefully fit with a
we've got some Roman Catholic stuff in the patron bonus
No,
episode.
we do, actually. We're going to go and record a bonus episode. And because we'd even first mentioned we should talk about the prophecy of the popes, and I had no idea what they were talking about. I thought it was that like the Fatima prophecy, which I know we've mentioned in the past. And so, but I thought, well, maybe let's talk about the Fatima prophecies, because those are possibly ones that people have heard of a bit more. 3 famous prophecies given to a bunch of Portuguese shepherds in 1917 to do with popes and the church and all stuff like that. So that's what we're going to do in our bonus episode, talk about the Fatima prophecies.
It's a prophecy bonanza
Yes.
or prophecy ponanza. It's a ponanza.
Yes, it's a combination of 2 words to make a new word. Is exactly what it is.
Yep, and it's comedy gold whenever it's done.
Every time. So if you'd like to hear that and you're a patron, good news. Just go check Patreon and it'll pop up wherever you get your Patreons. And if you're not a patron, then you also go to Patreon and search for the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy and sign yourself up. It's as simple as that. And I think we're done.
I think we are done.
We are all done. That's enough popes for now. So until next week, Conspiracy. See you later.
And I am going to go investigate the snaky man.
Good. Still feeling good about the catchphrase, I have to say. Hasn't worn off yet.
Not yet, but when it wears off, the hangover is going to be terrible.
It's going to be horrible.
Yeah, it's going to hurt a lot.
Goodbye. The Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy features Josh Addison and Associate Professor M.R.X. Dentith. Our producers are a mysterious cabal of conspirators known as Tom, Philip, and another who is so mysterious that they remain anonymous. You can contact us electronically via podcastconspiracy@gmail.com or join our Patreon and get access to our Discord server. Or don't, I'm not your mum. And remember, groove is in the heart.